why you're addicted to TikTok and other social media. So, people often talk about addiction, right? We all know it. We all know dopamine cycles and blah, 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 and flashy colors and red and pink, and these things hook your brain, and you want to use social media more and more. And these are just obvious things that we all know. Simple enough, but there's a reason that's obvious when I mention it, but it's overlooked. If I asked you why are you addicted to social media, you wouldn't think of this. But if I told you it, you'd say, well, obviously that's the purpose of social media. And I think you can start to see what it is. But let me tell you a story. So 2 nights ago, I was here in this room and I was feeling very lonely. And I was just in my bed and I had this strong urge to use Instagram. And normally I don't really have urges like that to use social media. So I was wondering why I felt like that. And then I realized I really miss my family. And even more than that, I hadn't interacted with anyone the whole day. Barely. I'd barely seen anyone. I hadn't even spent more than 5 minutes with somebody I was close to. And I barely had more than a 5 minute conversation with people around me my age. And I just realized how lonely that made me feel. And then why that was pushing me to use social media. And that's the whole basis of social media. Right now it's obvious to you, of course. Social media is for socializing. It's just obvious. Why would I mention that to you? Because it's not something you realize enough. Social media, part of the reason it's so powerful and addicting is because it gives you connection, which you might not have in person. And it's just such an important thing to point out. I mean, imagine if you were surrounded by loads of people that you cared about and you were constantly socializing. Would you even think about opening social media? No, of course not, because it just wouldn't matter. It would be pointless. And so you can see that social media is just a way of coping with loneliness. And it's sad because something that was designed to make people more connected and social has surprisingly had the opposite effect, as it always does when people who like to abuse new toys and drugs get a hold of them and they're not regulated. And there's obvious issues with social media, right? The first thing is that the high levels of usage make people not socialize in real life. People are less likely to be social in person. They don't care about seeing other people because they have Instagram. So what's the need? And it kind of replaces that in-person socialization. But this kind of relates to the second problem. People, they become more awkward. They get put into a vicious cycle because, it's harder for them to interact in person since they've spent so much time online, And then what happens is they find it even harder to interact in person because they spend even more time online. And then that inability to interact in person pushes them further and further and further. And then they stop interacting in person, or they do it very little, just when they have to. And this relates to the first issue, which is that, social media doesn't really replace in-person socialization. It just doesn't. Touch, body language, just the physical presence of someone rather than on a screen. These things are not replaceable. The voice, this is not really well replaced by social media. Even, the closest alternative of, let's say, a Zoom meeting, you're never going to have that physical presence of somebody, which makes you feel so good. And that's just the reality of it. It can't replace, the socialization which we've become used to for millions of years as people. And so now you probably want some sort of solution, right? This isn't great. It's not good that people can't socialize in person. and that they do it less and less because of social media, which, funnily enough, was supposed to make people more connected. And the solution, to be honest, is simple. Another simple thing, which is to just socialize more in person. Live your life with other people. Be around other people. Sleep with other people. Be in the same room as other people. Be places with other people. And you will feel a lot less lonely, and you'll feel a very reduced urge to use social media. But this boils down to you. Can you be conscious enough to see these cycles and break these cycles? Can you stop yourself from just being in your room and using social media? Can you make yourself be with other people and go outside? And that's up to you. It's never going to be up to me. And, just the same, I can't expect anyone online to ever tell me or, make me do something. As much as their advice sounds great, I have to hold myself accountable, and I have to suffer for the gains that I'm willing to make.